Great. Ladies and gents, thank you very much for your time. So as I said, the focus of today's session will be the content of the career report. Make sure that you've got your own career report handy, whether it's in your hard copy or whether it's on your screen so that you can follow. I'm going to be using my own report, and I know I'm just repeating a few of the things because I didn't start the recording earlier. I will be using my own report, and I want you to follow in your report. Make sure that you make notes on your report, and I will be highlighting the areas that are different for the different age groups, as well as for the different habit patterns of people. So I'm going to try and do it as comprehensively as possible. Obviously, we can't cover all the aspects in terms of how the report populates with different habits and different age groups, but I will continuously allude to the different age groups and where that will populate differently in the report. Great, so let's start. Now, ladies and gentlemen, working through the career report with your client is really like building a puzzle together. And those of you that have now really read your own report in detail will see that it's different components and that the report builds with all the different components. Peter went through all of that last night in terms of stable versus dynamic and the complexity of the career, and must it be theoretical or practical. So those are all building blocks or puzzle pieces. And your goal and your aim is really to help your client to build this puzzle, to take the different pieces and to get to a complete puzzle that starts their journey for a career for a youngster, or that helps an older person to change direction into a new career or to change a direction into a different journey that they never thought would be possible. And that's really the purpose of this career, is to start a new journey for someone and for a youngster to start out their working career and to find the right environment and a job that will really suit their habits and their patterns. Now, I'm going to go into my own portal. I'm going to use the interactive report on the system. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to share my screen. I'll just make sure once I've shared that everybody can see. Let me just find it. Just want to confirm, you can maybe just show by means of a thumbs up. Can all of you see my screen? Great. So those of you that are currently administrators on the system, that would be like Joni and Sharon, and I think even Sean and Debbie, some of the others might also have access, Ellen maybe. You know that you can find your portal access at the bottom left when you log into the normal administrator view. So then you'll click on my portal, and then that will take you to the portal. Now I'm just going to move these faces a little bit so that I can see where I'm working. Great, so that's the portal. Now on the portal, obviously, just as a quick guide, there's a dashboard view. There are some actions that you can take, and you can really play around with the portal if you haven't in the past. Your profile page where you can update your details like your email address and your telephone number. Access to the reports, that would be the introduction report for Shadow Match as well as the full report. And then you see the new button, and we've also changed the color to the career report color so that it's easily identifiable. And if you click on that, that then takes you to the career report. Just for completeness, you've got your relationships tab. This is where you can request, and I think Ellen earlier today purchased the relationship report. Well done. I hope you enjoy the report. This is where you can access 8 types of relationship reports with friends and family. And it's also good if you do have a counseling session with somebody that comes for career counseling to maybe help them understand their portal. Because, you know, dealing with relationships with parents and with friends is also an important aspect when you are struggling with making decisions in terms of a career. So that just gives a complete picture and helps the individual to really optimize their relationships and their life as a whole. Then there's the personal development part. This is where an individual can request a development program and then obviously log out. So there you can see it's quite small, but there my name is. So we are working in my portal, and I'm going to go straight to my career report. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you will see that it's quite small on the screen, the way it populates now. We've asked one of the designers that we've contracted to help us a little bit with the look and feel of the portal as a whole, as well as the look and feel of the career report. So this might change in the future, not in terms of content, The graphs will still be interactive, the videos will still be interactive, but it might be, you know, the printed document is beautiful, but the one on screen is not necessarily as beautiful in terms of the layout. So that we're working on that, and that might change, but don't be stressed. You won't feel like you've lost something if you log in one day and it looks different. You'll definitely be able to find your way still. So ladies and gentlemen, the first part of the career report, obviously you'll see that we've got the year of birth, and now I'm giving my age away, so maybe I should scroll past that quite quickly. That gives the birth date, and it's quite important for me. I just want to make a comment here. Peter alluded to it last night, that you've got under your 25s, and then your 25 to 35, and then your above 35s. We are also going to add another age group, and that is under 18s. Because there are a lot of high school kids, middle school and high school, that are really looking at what should I study. And I know especially in the States, it's quite important if a child is under 18 that the parents give consent to these type of reports. So that's something that we've got on our to-do list. We will add that as an age group. The content will be the same as the below 25s. So if somebody under the age of 25 requests the report, they're 23, they request the report, or somebody at the age of 17 requests the report, it will be the same content in terms of the age group, but obviously there will be an extra step in terms of the 18-year and younger age groups for the parents to give consent and to make sure. Apparently, I think the parents need to be in the loop with this process. It can't just be done by the child or by themselves. So that's something that we will add. And this is quite important, again, to take note. You will see as I work through my report that it acknowledges the fact that I'm at an older age, that I'm experienced, that I'm in a mature phase of my life. Obviously, those sentences will be different for the youngsters. And at the younger the age, the sentences will not talk about experience. It will not talk about work experience, because those youngsters haven't been in those type of situations. It will then talk the language of school or study or young language, because we acknowledge the fact that they haven't got the experience of different working environments. Now, the introduction just helps the person understand how to read this report. And it's quite important that you take note and that you help the person to understand how this report is structured. And if you look at the third paragraph on my report, you'll see, I'm just going to highlight so that you know exactly where I am currently at. Shadow Match is very positive when somebody with extensive life experience requests a career match report. Now you can refer to and I'm sure looking at the audience today, this might be the sentence for most of us, because I think we are all at an experienced part of our lives. And the world of work has changed so much, and there are so many different opportunities to choose from. Most people experience a dynamic and evolving workplace reality. So this just acknowledges the fact that I'm in an experienced phase of my life. And obviously for younger people, you'll see that the age comes into effect in this paragraph as well. Even if you look at the next sentence in the next paragraph, think about your experiences in life, workplace experiences, and the stories you hear from other people about their jobs. Now, obviously, this again will not populate for youngsters because they haven't been in jobs. The sentences are collected in the back end in the database as the system acknowledges the age. That's why it's very important that an individual selects their age. If when they complete the Shadow Match worksheet, they neglected to add their age, when they request the report, before the report is populated, the system will then populate at this stage the 3 age brackets, but very soon then the 4, and say, before we can compile your report, you need to indicate in which age bracket do you sit. So they don't have to give their birth date, because I know that's also a little bit of a challenge nowadays, because people are worried about, you know, their personal data getting stolen or getting sold. So they will just have to indicate in which of those age brackets they are before the system actually then compiles the report. So just so that you know, if there's a question, but why did they ask my age bracket? That's to give you a precise and an accurate report. And then there's a little bit of a paragraph explaining how do you read your report. Let me just quickly do. Great. Now we're going to start, ladies and gentlemen, with the first part of the report, and that is the whole Industry 4.0 part of the report. Now, this entire section here talks about the content of the video. We're going to watch the video together, and I know you've watched it, but this is also a nice refresher, and it's a nice way for me to help you understand this first part of the report and the content of the future of work section in the report. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show the video. I hope you can all hear. Let's see how it plays.
The fourth industrial revolution is here. It's about connected and intelligent computer systems that will control robots to do what humans have done previously. Let me show you an example. A team of system designers will design self-driving cars, and robots will build the cars. Once the cars are on the road, technical enablers will look after them, configure them, service and repair them. Lawyers will write the laws to regulate how the cars are used. Police officers will catch criminals who steal self-driving cars. The lawyers and police officers are functional enablers. A fourth group of careers will be the artists who design the interior of the car. Study the details of your Shadow Match career report to optimize your future career.
Great. So ladies and gentlemen, that's the video. Now you've all seen the video. The first section now explains this video in detail. It explains the 4 areas of jobs in Industry 4, namely your designers, your technical enablers, your functional enablers, and then your artists. Now, we had a question in one of the previous sessions that we did in the training sessions. What's the percentage of people that fall into these 4 different groups of careers? And your highest percentage of individuals that you will deal with in terms of career counseling, and just if we look at the population as a whole, your highest percentage will fall into the areas functional and technical enablers. A smaller percentage, a very low percentage of people will fall into the groups of designers and artists. And your artists will probably be your smallest group. And you will remember that Peter said last night about those extra indicators that he measures on, or that Shadow Match measures. So if a career report really tells a person towards the end where the career tips and the conclusion is that they should consider a career in art, this is really something you need to help your client to explore, because it's such a low percentage of the population that actually gets that as a recommendation. And if we look at the population as a whole, that's your lower percentage of job content is your artists. Now, this explains, as I said, all of this in detail, so it's quite important that that is read with the client and making sure that they understand the 4 different groups, where your designers will design systems. Your technical enablers will be people that take the designs and technically make it happen. They make it work. They build these systems that the designers have designed. Your functional enablers are people that go into jobs where the job cannot yet be done. And I'm saying not yet, because a lot of these jobs might in future also become automated and be replaced by means of technology. But currently there are jobs where people are needed. And these jobs are then jobs that we classify as your functional enablers. These are jobs and careers where people are still necessary to do the job or to execute the job. And then your 4th category will be your artists. These are people that do the design work. They design marketing material, they design interiors of cars. They would work for a company like Mercedes or BMW, design the interior, design the look and feel of the inside. Even in corporate environments, they are your interior decorators. These are artists, and these are jobs where the art talent of someone is needed to execute the job. Now, if you look at the last paragraph on my report, and I'm going to highlight that, that gives the specific indication for the individual of where that individual's career should be focused. Now, for me, it says your specific Industry 4 position is a strong directive to work in the functional enablers space, where intelligent systems cannot do the work because of the complexities related to the tasks. Your career must take you to places where people are still doing the job. The reason why people are doing the work could be anything. The complexities, the physical demands, the innovation, the uniqueness of the work might make it human dependent. And this is where you should focus your career. So take a moment and look at yours and see what is your recommendation. Remember, as I said, the higher percentage of the population will probably fall into the functional or the technical enablers group. Then second to that, in my report, it also gives me a second recommendation. And it says in the next chapter of your report, you will notice that working with ideas should be part of your career. Now, ideas linger more towards the design type. Try your best to decide on a career that is filled with ideas, thinking, and actively applying your mind to what needs to be done. The job must stretch your thinking. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you will see throughout the career report, and maybe you've noticed this as well, the report is very integrated. So the report looks at all the habits in the back end, looks at all the aspects, and it tries to bring it together, because the report has already now looked at my habits and said it's quite important that ideas must be part of my career. Although I must work in the functional enablers space, meaning that I should go into a career or a job where people still do the job. It mustn't just be a people-focused job. Ideas must be part of my career content. So this is quite important when you start the discussion with your client, to make sure that he or she understands, where does my future career sit in these 4 categories, looking at the Industry 4 categories that we are now entering. So that's the introduction, and that's the first bit of the career report. Now we're moving on to the broad focus of your career. So please get your report and make sure that you are on the page, the broad focus of your career. Now again, ladies and gentlemen, those of you that have played on your portal, you will see that you've got the video and you've got the show my position, which is the graph, which we will look at a bit later. So it's very important when you sit with your client that you watch the video and that you help the individual unpack the video. Remember, the video is there to help the individual understand the content that he or she will now be reading and focusing on. That's why it's quite easy for an individual to also take the career report and just read it and interpret it all by themselves. Obviously, it's an enhanced focus and an enhanced experience if the person can sit with an accredited career coach to help the person unpack and understand the concepts of the report. So let's look at the video of the broad focus of your career, and then we'll discuss this bit.
The careers we choose will always focus on either people, or working with objects, or working with ideas. In most careers, all 3 of these components are present, but there is a tendency that one takes a dominant position. Let me show you. For a nurse, the patient is the purpose of the work. The job is dominated by the need of a person. The computer technician, the plumber, and the engineer work with objects. The writer, architect, and lawyer focus on ideas. Remember, these are just examples and not career directives. Your preference is in the detail of your Shadow Match career report. The careers we choose will
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. So again, and you start to get the pattern. The first bit of your paragraphs of your report following the video is an explanation of what was covered in the video. And in this sense, it says every career engages people, objects, and ideas. Now, this is quite important. So the broad focus of the career highlights that the individual will either work with people, work with ideas, or work with objects, or a combination of the three. And this is now where we will look at the preference. So this first bit explains that there are three things that's the broad focus of the career. And then the system says, okay, now what is your preference? The your preference says, for you as an individual, and look at your own, what must be the focus of your career? In my report, it says, ideas-related careers must be the focus of your future choice. The work must be about ideas and concepts that need to be applied to get the desired outcome. A few examples will help you think about your best choice. Now, let me just interrupt myself again. Very important, you'll remember Peter said this a couple of times in the previous two sessions. The preference is the recommendation, and that is your directive. The examples are just triggers to help the individual think. It's very important that this is stressed when you work with a client, because it's so easy for people just to take the report page to the preference and their eye catches a career and says, oh yes, I thought I must become an engineer. The examples, and this is where it's very valuable for a career coach to engage with the client, because you can now help your client to think about careers and jobs that are ideas related. So look at your own and make sense of that. This is very important when you sit with an individual. What is the broad focus of your career? Now, if I just go back one step, you'll see that the system again gives a little bit of an age indication. For people with extensive experience, like yourself, the decision is a bit less challenging. So again, in this paragraph, the system highlights that I've got extensive experience. So the future career is maybe not that challenging because I've got experience, I've been in careers, I've been in jobs, where for the younger person, again, you'll see different sentences and different paragraphs because the system takes sentences to string the paragraphs together. Now let's look at the graph. Now, obviously, ladies and gentlemen, it's very nice when you do it on the portal because it's animated. When you just work with your hard copy, it's printed and it just gives your final gauge. It obviously does not animate, but when you work with a PDF document on a computer, even if you just work with a PDF document, your videos have links, but your graph obviously is then static. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this can become a full discussion point with your client because this shows clearly where is my preference in terms of people, where's my preference in terms of tasks, and where's my preference in terms of ideas. Now, my preference, as the system highlights, says my preference and my future choice should be idea-driven. So the intensity of my jobs should really focus on ideas and not on people or tasks. Now, let me just share an example with you of my own life and my own career. For many years, I worked as a manager in corporate environments. Now, obviously, the job of a manager is to manage people. So it's a people-intense job. You deal with conflict, you deal with this one that's got a headache, and this one needs to fetch his child and leave early, and this one's got a car problem, and I don't even want to think about it. I start to actually just feel the stress and feel how my breath is starting to just go away. So that's the challenge when you are working in an environment that's not your preference. My lowest preference is people. And now only years after I've moved out of the corporate environment and I don't manage a big team of people anymore, and I'm now part of Shadow Match and the research, and I've done Shadow Match, I've seen my own results, I look at this, I say, now it makes sense why those environments really became frustrating for me, and why I really felt like if something's closing in on me and I can't breathe. Because people should not be my preference in terms of the broad focus of my career. Now, this is very important to remember. These are building blocks of a puzzle. So I need to keep in mind now that my career should be idea focused. But now we start to get into the next and the next and the next category. It should be idea focused, but now the question is, should it be practical or theoretical? Because remember, it might be idea focused, but more practical. It's not a given that if it's idea focused, it's going to be a theoretical career. And that's quite important. When this is how we start getting the puzzle pieces and how we start putting that puzzle together. So by the end of our career discussion, the client really sees the picture of, okay, it must be idea focused. It must be working with people. I'm a functional enabler. So can you already see how it sounds like a contradiction? My Industry 4 job is a functional enabler. It's where people still need to do the job, but it doesn't necessarily say I have to work with people. So it's quite important that you start to interpret those things and see how they fit together and help your client think through these aspects, and then start to think about examples and use the examples in the report as triggers to help think about possible future careers, future study directions, and future jobs. So the broad focus of your career could be functional, but it could be idea driven. Or it could be you need to be a technical enabler, but it might be people driven in terms of your broad focus. So it's quite important that you in your own mind start to think about some of these combinations and just start to think about, what if it's technical enablers, but the person's highest one is people? What type of jobs will that be? So that you prepare yourself in terms of different thinking patterns and different career choices and career options and alternatives, so that when you sit with your career guidance clients, that you can help them think about various examples. Great, so let's move on. I don't know if there's any questions at this point, or anybody that wants to add or maybe share what their report is all about. Everybody still good? Looks like it, great. Good, so let's move on to the next one, the stable and the dynamic content of the career. Again, we're going to show the video first.
Some careers are, by definition, stable and some are dynamic. Others are somewhere in between. The question is, how stable and how dynamic should it be? Let me show you what I mean. A dentist could be seen as a stable career. It is about working on teeth every day, the same dental practice every day. The methods are the same. A medical doctor working as part of a sea rescue team has an extremely dynamic career. Working hours could be any time. Emergencies are all different. Places are all different, and the colleagues change every shift. Then there are jobs that are somewhere in between. Your report has all the information about your preference.
I just want to check, you can all hear the video when I play the video? Great. So, ladies and gentlemen, the first paragraph here is the broad statement about the preference of the about the concept of, in this case, stable versus dynamic. So that explains the concept, stable versus dynamic, and this helps the individual understand how to interpret the next phase of this report. Now, as with all the others, the next paragraph then gives the preference of the individual. So you've looked at your video, you've watched the video, you've read the first paragraph. Now look at what your preference is. In my case, the system says you have a slight preference for working with controlled adventures. Now, when we look at the gauge or the graph, I'm going to interpret this a little bit more. But this is important to look at the wording. It says you've got a slight preference for working with controlled adventures. Adventures within the boundaries of safety will work for you. Careers with some opportunities to explore will stimulate your energy. Stay within manageable limits of the unknown. Every day should not be the same as the previous. In simple terms, this is where your career should be dynamic and adventurous, but without danger. Now that again is your directive. Now it gives a list of examples. Shadowmatch wants to provide you with some specific examples that will best demonstrate how you should approach this. Now, look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Keep in mind, examples are not recommendations. And I know we say this many times, but it's so important. In the past, before we had this career report, because it's a new addition to the system, we did a lot of career reports manually for clients. So some of the career coaches that work in South Africa would contact us and say, please, can you do a career report for my client? And what we would then do is we would manually go into the habits and start to do calculations, and then we would write a report. And obviously what we did way back then is in the conclusion of the report, we would then give some recommendations and some examples of possible careers. And most of those career coaches took the report, they paged to page number last, and they said, oh yes, you should become an engineer or a dentist, or maybe you can even study medicine. Great. They never read the report. They went to the very last paragraph and they just said, that's the recommendation. So be very careful not to fall into the trap of, with every section, just going to the bit that says, what is the preference of my client? It's very important that they understand the entire picture to understand the preference. So I know this sounds like a broken record, but it's very important that you highlight to your client that the recommendation says, this is your preference. And then the examples say, let's think about some examples that highlight the preference of working with controlled adventures. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in the back end, we've got a long list of examples. Obviously, we can't give 20 examples. So the system chooses, according to my habits, the system chose these examples as examples to trigger my thoughts. For the next person, it might be different. And the system selects out of that entire list 4 or 5, maybe 6 that are appropriate for that individual, for his or her preference. And it keeps in mind the habit and how strong and what the intensity of the habit is that we use for calculating and looking at the stable and the dynamic content of the career. Now let's look at my position. Can you see that the system shows that it must be slightly dynamic? And this is exactly what we read here. You have a slight preference for working with controlled adventures. So I'm just past the middle point of being stable and dynamic. The system says it's not in the middle. It's just past the middle of being stable and dynamic. That's why it says you must work with controlled adventures. Not every day something different, not doing things that will really scare me, but it must be things that are different and that's not the same every day. So to give you an example of my current situation in the Shadowmatch world, I look after the social media marketing, I do some training, I write content, I do presentations, I work with clients, I work with consultants, I do some research, I assist with some of the research. So it's a variety of tasks and jobs within a known space. So the space is known, it's Shadowmatch, it's a known system, but the things that I do within this space are different. Sometimes I go out to clients, sometimes I sit and do research, sometimes I do a training session, sometimes I write content for training or content for reports. So this is what the system says. Working with controlled adventures, adventures within the boundaries of safety. So this is why what I'm currently doing works for me, because it's not that stable, but it's not way towards the dynamic side. Now again, I'm going to ask you, can you see how the puzzle starts to build? I need to be, my industry 4 position is a functional enabler. If we look at my broad focus, it says I must primarily work with ideas. And now it says, when I work with ideas, it should be in sort of a dynamic environment, but within safety boundaries. So now we start to build this puzzle, and it's quite important that when you sit with your client, you start to just make notes on the side, so that once you've read the entire report and you've worked through the entire report, you can really start to visually build a picture and say, okay, let's see, where do we start with your journey and your career journey? Great. Let's just, and you can hide that. Let's hide that position. Let's hide that, so it just makes it a bit clear, and we can hide the videos as well. So the next section of our career report is then the practical or theoretical. Now the practical or theoretical talks about, do you do a job that's more practical, or do you work more with theory and less practical content? Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is important because specifically in this section, there are different videos. For some of the other sections, it's the same video. It's always the video about the broad focus. These are the objects, tasks, and ideas. But for the practical or theoretical, there are, I think, 5 or 6 different videos. And the video gets selected by looking at the habits and specifically the conceptual fitness habit of the individual. Now, this is not important to mention to your client, but it's good for you to understand that if the client gets a different video to what you got or what your previous client got, then you know the reason for this is the system selects the video based on the conceptual fitness of the individual. So I'm going to show you my video. Some of you might have received the same one. Maybe this is the first time that you actually see this video.
All careers are either more practical than theoretical, or more theoretical than practical. Let me show you an example. The practical civil engineer wants to work where the physical work is done and prefers to actively participate in the building activities. The theoretical engineer wants to design how and what needs to be done. The third engineer has a practical as well as a theoretical preference by checking that the physical building is exactly according to the design. These preferences are related to their habits. Your preference is in your report. Shadow Match wants you to build a career for life.
Maybe just by a show of hands, who of you got the same video? 2, great. And I can't see all the faces, I can see some of them. Yeah, so already here you can see that there are different videos, and it's also, some of them are male and female. So based on your conceptual fitness, if it's a male client, they'll get a different video to a female client. So that can also differ. They might have the same conceptual fitness, but because they've got a different gender, they actually get a different video. So we've tried to customize those videos so that it's not all the same for all clients, and that it really speaks to the fitness level of that specific client. Now, by now, you know that the first paragraph is just an explanation and an elaboration of what you've heard in the video. And then we get to your preference. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's just read what the system says. What is my preference? Your career of choice will be theoretical and very conceptual, with abstract ideas that must be integrated to reach a desired outcome. Now, remember, I'm a functional enabler. I must work with ideas. I must work slightly more dynamic than in a stable environment. And now it says it must be theoretical, very conceptual, and I must work with abstract ideas. So it starts to come together. I think if you look at your own report, and if you now go back after the session today and you look at your own report, you're going to start to see how the picture falls together, and maybe why you are doing what you're doing and you love it, or maybe why you are doing what you're doing and you're not very comfortable, because some of these things are out of line with what your natural habit patterns are. So the system again, and you can see that again, it refers to the age, the fact that you are in a mature phase of your life with lots of experience should not discourage you from acquiring knowledge that will enable you to make certain changes to your future career plans. Let me just read the next sentence. This doesn't necessarily mean going to a college or university. Now, in this section for the younger generation, this is where we might then recommend that they, if it's at all possible, consider future studies. If it's somebody that's not just 18 or 20, but maybe in their early 20s, consider further studies, not just studies, but further studies. So the system recognizes that I'm 48 years old, and it says I'm in a mature phase of my life, but it says this should not discourage you from acquiring new knowledge. And it says it doesn't mean I must go to university or college. And this is exactly what I'm doing currently. I've now enrolled for an online course in social media marketing to optimize the way we use our social media. So I'm acquiring new knowledge. It's something that is idea related. It's something that moves into the more adventurous space because my habits wants me to do controlled adventures. It's functional enabler because social media is technology driven, but a person still needs to write the content, and a person still needs to do the brochure that gets published and gets posted on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So the functional enabler space says, yes, the job still needs to be done by a person, but it's ideas related and it's something new that I'm learning. So can you see how what I'm doing currently is stimulating all my natural patterns? And that's why it's energizing me. It's not giving me, making me fatigued. It's actually giving me energy. It's actually driving my energy to do things that I really love and that I can do to add value to the business. And then the sentence says there are more learning opportunities than ever before. The question is, what knowledge would be most applicable for you? Your best focal point will be to work towards a career that is theoretical, abstract, and conceptual. So read your own report, see what the recommendation is. But again, this is very important when you work with your client to see what is the importance in terms of practical or theoretical, and how do we know how practical or how theoretical it should be? We look at the position. So can you see, very similar to my stable and dynamic, it's just off the middle. It's more towards theoretical, but it's not far away from practical. So I cannot do something that's completely theoretical. I must engage in activities where there's a slight bit of practicality to it as well, but more towards the theoretical side. So this helps you to look at the intensity and how theoretical or how practical the career of your client should be, and the study direction that they are deciding on if it's a youngster. How practical or how theoretical should they go in terms of the studies that they do to enter into the career market? Now, ladies and gentlemen, the next one is quite important, and we're going to spend a little bit more time on this one, and that's the complexity index of the career. Now, you will remember that we spoke about, and Peter spoke about, the conceptual fitness last night. Now, I'm just going to allude to that again because it's quite important to understand that the conceptual fitness is all about the fitness. And I'm going to again highlight the example of physical fitness. Now, those of you that haven't done it before, please watch your video. And if I go to on my portal, I actually want to share that one video because it explains the fitness so well. So let me just go to my reports. No, dashboard. So you know that on your personal portal, you've got 2 videos explaining your Shadow Match personal results. Now, the video number 2 explains the conceptual fitness, and I'm going to play video number 2 because I want you to carefully listen what is meant by conceptual fitness. And by all means, if you sit with one of your clients, use this video because it helps to explain the normal shadow match results as well. So I'm going to go and I'm just going to play that one video.
We will now conclude your understanding of the shadow match individual results by looking at the conceptual fitness, task efficiency, time, and attitude graphs. The shadow match worksheet presents 10 riddles or problems to resolve. This section shows how many of those riddles the individual managed to resolve successfully, and we refer to this component as conceptual fitness. Shadow match doesn't measure conceptual ability, but rather the application of the conceptual ability through the completion of the shadow match worksheet. Let's use an example. Most people have the ability to run. However, not everyone has the same fitness level. Some individuals might be fit enough to run a marathon. Some individuals will be fit enough to run 10 kilometers, and others might only be able to run 100 meters. They all have the ability, but they are at different fitness levels. This is exactly what we measure with the conceptual fitness in shadow match. The vast majority of people have the ability to score 10 out of 10 for the conceptual questions. However, we are all at different fitness levels. The conceptual score can also be interpreted according to the habit categories. Conceptual score of 1 and 2 will indicate a planned fitness level. Conceptual score of 3 and 4 will show a necessary fitness level. Conceptual score of 5 will indicate everyday fitness. Conceptual score of 6 shows a strong fitness level. Conceptual score 7, 8, 9, and 10 indicate a radical conceptual fitness. While completing the shadow match worksheet, the system measures time duration from start to finish. This is the time component. There is no time limit.
Great. I just wanted to go to specifically to the conceptual fitness. So it's very important, ladies and gentlemen, that we have this in the back of our minds when we work with the complexity index section of the career report. Remember, this is about fitness, as the video highlighted. It's not about ability. And the physical example is a very good example. We all have the same ability. Well, assuming that we all have 2 legs and 2 arms, we have the same ability. We can all walk and we can all run, but we're not at the same fitness level. So somebody might be able to put on their trainers and do a marathon, where the next person cannot even run around the building and they need to call an ambulance. We are at different fitness levels. And this is exactly the same when we look at the conceptual fitness. All of the individuals have the ability to probably score 10 out of 10 for those conceptual riddles or questions. For some, it might take quite some time. They have to sit and read and read and read and then do some calculations and then decide on an answer. For other people, it's quite quick to do. But we are not all at the same fitness level. And this is a very important part of the report, because you need to help your client understand what is the complexity level that he or she is currently functioning at in terms of their conceptual fitness, and where do they start their journey in terms of their career. So we're going to watch the video now, and I want you to really pay attention to this video because we're going to watch it for a second time. I want to highlight specific things and specific aspects in this video with regards to the complexity index of the career.
We know that people prefer to work with different levels of complexities. In most instances, it has nothing to do with our abilities or our intelligence. It is mostly about our preferences and our habits. Most people learn over time to work with complex problems and riddles. This part of your report wants to help you understand the level of career complexity as your optimal starting point. Remember, some of us must begin new ventures on a very easy to understand level and progressively move forward to do more complex work. Some of us prefer to begin with the very complex stuff. Your report will inform you about your optimal starting point with the aim to progressively build a career for life.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to play the video again, and I'm going to stop it once or twice because I want to highlight specific aspects of the video, and I want you to make notes of this, whether it's a mental note or actually physically making a note on your notepad, because this is very important when you work with your client.
We know that people prefer to work with different levels of complexities. In most instances, it has nothing to do with our abilities or our intelligence. It is mostly about our preferences and our habits. Most people learn over time to work with complex problems and riddles. This part of your report wants to help you understand the level of career complexity as your optimal starting point.
Did you catch this? Your optimal starting point. Now, this is very important, ladies and gentlemen, because you might be working with a client, and if you look at their shadow match habits and their shadow match full report, and it's quite important, maybe just as a side comment, when you are preparing to sit with a client for a career counseling or coaching session, to also look at their shadow match results, because it gives you a very good handle on who is this client that I'm going to be dealing with. It shows you the conceptual score. It shows you the attitude. Does this person prefer to get involved or to stay uninvolved? Because this is also going to help you with how you craft your coaching session. Because if it's somebody that's predominantly uninvolved, it's going to be more difficult to get the client to engage, to come with his or her own examples. So as part of your preparation for a career coaching session, study the shadow match results as well. If somebody scores 1 or 2 or 3 out of 10 for their conceptual fitness, this is what Peter mentioned last night as well in the training session. That's a starting point. So we are not going to be tough on our client and say, you know what, there's not really a future career for you looking at engineering. You want to become a medical doctor. I'm not sure that you're going to be able to do it. There's an optimal starting point for the individual, and that's where they start their journey. So let's just continue with the video.
Remember, some of us must begin new ventures on a very easy to understand level and progressively move forward to do more complex work.
This is a very nice picture to share with your client and to stop the video when you watch the video with your client. Some of us start the venture at a very early and easy point in our career. So if your client has got a conceptual fitness level of 1, 2, 3, even 4 out of 10, they are going to start their career at a different point, at an easy to engage point. But somebody that scores much higher, 7, 8, 9 out of 10, even 10 out of 10 for conceptual fitness, will probably start the career somewhere here, quite high up on this staircase already, because they've already progressed in terms of their fitness level. And this is important when you help your client think about possible careers. Where are they now? And what are the possibilities? And how can they progress on this journey of becoming who they ultimately want to be? Obviously, taking all the other things into consideration. Stable versus dynamic, practical versus theoretical. Where in the 4 categories of industry 4 careers will this person function best? So that's quite important in terms of this journey, to take the other aspects into account as well. But where do we start thinking about careers that are possible careers for you as the client? And this is where we will look at the staircase and we will look at the conceptual fitness to help this person craft something that works for them as an optimal starting point.
Some of us prefer to begin with the very complex stuff. Your report will inform you about your optimal starting point with the aim to progressively build a career for life.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, the video ended with your optimal starting point to progressively build a career for life. And this is important, especially when you sit with young people and even with people that want to change a career. And you can see that part of the challenge in their current career is maybe the fact that their conceptual fitness is not a match to what they currently do as a career. Let's help them craft a new journey. Let's help them start with a new progressive career. And this is where you will start with your complexity level. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if we look at This is your explanation, and then your optimal choice. That's again the preference. So look at yours. What does mine say? Mine says you must carefully consider your future career. Come on. A career with limited challenges in terms of complexities and problems that must be resolved will frustrate you. You must think about a career that will seriously challenge your mind and test your abilities to solve problems. I'm going to read just 2 more sentences. This applies equally to training you might decide to do, as well as academic studies. Again, Shadow Match is aware of your age, and it wants to give you the best advice possible. Can you see again the age comes into play? And even though the system recognized that I'm mature, I'm 48, the system says you might still want to consider academic studies. You might decide to do academic studies. So it's not just reserved for the younger generation. There might still be an opportunity for me, even if it's just doing post-grad studies to further enhance my knowledge and to further enhance my knowledge for what I have to do currently in my career. If you look at the last bit here, the system says, this will be the most important aspect of your decision. Your conceptual position will determine the success of your career. If you decide to do something with limited abstract content, your abilities will not function optimally and your career will frustrate you. You must be in a position to fully apply your mind to its full capacity. Now, read your own report, and you don't have to do it now, but go and read what the system says. What does the report say about your complexity index? Go and look at your position. The system shows that my gauge is on the far end of the complexity. So it's important for me to work in the functional enabler space, to work with ideas, to work with complex ideas, to work a bit more theoretical than practical. Can you see how it starts to fall together and how every little puzzle piece now starts to form a picture of what type of jobs can I start to think about? If I was a youngster and I was going into my university career and I wanted to start to engage with studies, these were the things that I now need to take into account. I need to do a job where people can still do the job because I physically need to do the job, but it must be conceptual, it must be abstract, it must challenge my problem-solving skills because I must solve problems, I must apply my mind. So what would a career counselor say to me? Let's start to think of examples of these type of jobs that will work for you and that you can go into and that you can explore. So that's my position. Look at yours and see what the system says for you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, now we're moving into the section that we had some discussion about last night, and that's your career tips. Now, this is the part of the report where the system looks at your 5 highest and your 3 softest. You can also say lowest, but we prefer to talk about soft habits. And the system now says these are important career tips. So before we start to look at the tips and we explore it a bit more and I explain how this is constructed, let's look at the video about the career tips.
This part of your report will provide you with several important tips. Some tips are about aspects of a career that you should try to avoid, and some will indicate career aspects that are important and positive building blocks. Read the detail on each aspect and try to keep it in mind when you decide on a future career. Remember, no career will give you everything you want. You will always compromise something during a lifelong journey of building a career for life. Keep in mind, it is not about the perfect career, it is about the optimal career.
Ladies and gentlemen, this talks to the meta-modern approach. It's not about the perfect career. It's about the optimal career. It's not about the one or the other. It's about a combination of what works for you. And this is what the meta-modern career counseling approach is all about and should be, is what is your optimal career? let's take all these aspects. It's not the one is right and the other one is wrong. We can't throw some of this away. We need to start to say, how do we take all these building blocks and how do we craft a career that will optimally help you grow and that will in the long term be something that gives you joy, gives you fulfillment, and speaks to your needs, your talents, and your likes and your dislikes. So this is the meta-modern approach to say, let's craft a career. This is a journey. It's not an instant decision, and this is what you're going to do. We're starting this journey. This is a process, and this report and this counseling session is here to help you start to think, how do I craft this career and how do I start this journey? Now, ladies and gentlemen, you will remember from the previous session that the 5 highest and the 3 lowest habits are obviously now used to populate the career tips. Now, it's not directly translated as the habits that you see on the shadow match results, but those of you that have worked with the shadow match results for a while would obviously be able to link the career tip to the specific habit on shadow match. Now, this is where each of the reports will be different, and some of you might have similar career tips than I have, but this should probably be quite different for all 9 of us in the session today. Now, if we look at mine, it obviously, as I said, it takes the habit and it reformulates the habit as a working construct. You will recall the whole discussion in yesterday's session about habits transcend contextual boundaries. In other words, habits can function in one environment and then function as successfully in the next environment. They cross boundaries. Now, this is what we see here. We use the habits and we look at how will it function as a working construct. So let's look at mine. The first one is immediacy and being quick. Now, this is quite easy to relate back to the habits. This relates back to the habit of responsiveness. And you will see that with all these tips, you have the definition. So it always starts with the definition. Again, then it gives a little bit of an explanation of what is this being quick and efficient, or immediacy and being quick, all about. And then again, it gives me a comment directly related to me and my habits. Now, this one is one of my high habits, and it says, in addition to the above, you should also keep in mind that the work content of your ideal career must allow you to work at a continuously high rate of efficiencies. Unnecessary holdups will frustrate you, and your career must allow for a continuous and efficient flow of activities. So it must be complex, it must be abstract, it must be idea related, it must be a little bit more dynamic than stable. I must work in the functional enabler space. I must work quite quickly and efficiently. I mustn't work in a slow-paced environment. So this is again something important as one of the puzzle pieces in my puzzle of the perfect career or the perfect journey towards a career that will work for me. The next one says to simplify work content. The definition: the challenge to simplify complicated concepts and processes as an integral part of your career. Now, this relates to the habit on the shadow match graph, to simplify. And this says that you have a wonderful opportunity to decide on a career with relative ease. This paragraph is very important. Your career must be dominated by the specific task to make complex content, intriguing processes, and confusing designs, or even senseless information, easy to understand, simple to communicate, structured, clear, and understandable. Read your own. I don't know if any of you have this one, but this is one of the things that says, my career should give me the opportunity to take complex, remember my complexity is very high, take complex content and make it simple. Break it down into simple bits so that it's easy to communicate to other people, that it's easy to understand, and that the simplified content can then be used to solve a problem or to work with a specific challenge. Now you would see, if you look at the second part of this paragraph, again the system says Here are some examples to help you think. And now it starts to list certain industries with examples. And there's quite a lot of examples in this paragraph. Advertising, teaching, let's just go, engineers, industrial engineers. And then it says similar focus areas of your career of choice will provide you with a fulfilling career. So with these career tips, the report aims to give quite a broad range of examples, again, to help the individual think about this specific habit or the specific work construct and how that can relate to a possible career and a working environment that can work for the individual. Now, my next tip is working with problems. The definition again, solving problems that are different, diverse, and the problem content of a career in general. Now, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm repeating this again. Now, think back about all the aspects of my report. Complexity is high, must be ideas related. It must be more dynamic than stable. Can you see how everything starts to tie together and how, or immediately, if I was the career counselor helping me, I can start to think of some careers and some study courses at university and even at some other academic institutions that might work for my habits and that might work for my preferences. So immediately I can start to make a list of examples that I can help my client think about and that I can help my client to steer in a specific direction. Now, can you see with this tip, the system says the problems must be relatively complex and they must fully engage your mind to find solutions. The system pulls everything together and it integrates and it takes some of the things that we've read in previous paragraphs, and again it says, must help you to fully engage your mind to find solutions. Now I think there's two more high habits. Taking control, that would be propensity to own on the shadow match habits. And that's one of my strongest habits, is taking ownership, sometimes to my detriment, but that's my habit. I can't do anything about it. And this says that the extent to which your career will allow you to take full control of the work that needs to be done. My last sentence in the paragraph, your career must be such that you can own and control the majority of tasks related to the final deliverable. Can you see now, ladies and gentlemen, if we go back to that first graph where my people was my lowest, people and then tasks and then ideas, why being a teacher, because I was a teacher in my previous life, or in my younger years I was a teacher, where some of that could actually frustrate me because I'm not fully in control. I'm dependent on being a manager and being dependent on other people that need to do things, and I can't do everything myself because the manager just can't do everything. And where the frustrations came in, because my optimal career is where I can take full ownership. So that's why currently the social media is something new to me, because I'm not really a social media boffin. I do Facebook just as an individual on my private channel, but that's something that I said I can take full ownership of. I can write the content, I can make the posts, I can decide when to post, and that's why it's going to work for me, because it's new knowledge that I'm acquiring. I'm taking full ownership. I'm not dependent on anybody else. It's abstract, it's idea driven. I can take complex things, simplify it so that the message that I give to my audience is something that they say, I understand, this is great, this is a new concept, I like it. And this is important because, and I must be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, after I read my own career report, I started thinking about a few things and said, that's what I'm missing. And I started coming up with ideas within our current business of what can I do differently that will be valuable for the business, but that will also be valuable to me as an individual. This is a very important point, and Peter mentioned it, I think, last night, and maybe I'm confusing some of the training sessions now. Helping somebody in a current job, even if they don't want to make a change in their career, the career report can be very valuable. Because someone might find that they are stuck in their current career. Or you know what, it's just the next day is the same as the previous day and there's no more challenges for me. So if you sit with somebody, even if they're older, not necessarily to change direction, but to look at their current job and to say, but let's read your career report. What in your current job can you optimize? What extra responsibilities can you take on that will really speak to your natural patterns, that will energize you and that will make you more successful and will bring you some fulfillment and joy in your job? And this is the experience I had of the career report. Not to make a career change, because I mean, I'm one of the owners of the business and I love what I do, but to say, but what else can I do that will really satisfy some of these aspects that's not currently satisfied in my career and in my daily job? Great, let's move on. The next one is recovering from failure. That's also one of my strong habits. The challenge to relentlessly keep trying even if many efforts have failed. I guess you can see that this is the resilience habit that we refer to here. And it says your future career must test your habit of persistence, tenacity, and resilience. Now, this is interesting, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of people will shy away from this, but the report says to me, a smooth running workplace without challenges that could end as failures will not keep your involvement and active interest. You must do stuff that has an element of risk to it. And then again, some examples. Lawyers, process designers, research work, politics, and sports professionals are all jobs with high failure risks. These type of workplaces will satisfy you. Even research, such as medicine or biodegradable materials development, will be satisfying as a possible future career. Now, who would have ever thought that a career report would say, you know, work in an environment with a high failure risk? For some people, that will completely make them have nightmares. But for other people, they say, that's going to energize me. And how will you know that if you don't have a shadow match result and a career report that looks at these aspects? If you think of traditional career counseling, who will ever tell somebody you must go and work in an environment where your tenacity and your resilience will be tested and where there's lots of failures and a risk of failure, because that will energize you? We all want to just work in environments where things are successful. So this is quite an important aspect. These tips should not be taken lightly. It doesn't carry a higher weight than the rest of the report. It's quite important to pay a lot of attention to these important career tips. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the following ones are the ones obviously where my habits are the lowest or the softest. Working with people, and you'll remember that first gauge, people was my lowest one. And people say to me, Lizette, but we can't believe that your people habit scores the lowest. You know what, ladies and gentlemen, when I engage with people, I actually see the person as a task or as an object. And I mean it in a very positive way. When I was a teacher, I would manage the class and the learners in the class as a project. And I would not get involved with every kid's problems and challenges. I would focus on the task at hand. And that's how, but people experience me as a high people's person because I managed it as a task, because that's the only way for me to keep sane, because my people habit is not one of my highest habits. And now the system tells me, your career of choice must engage people as a small portion of a working day. You know what, ladies and gentlemen, I often come home and then I say to Peter, you know what, I'm working from home tomorrow. I just think I need some me time. And we don't even have a big team, but I can feel that sometimes it's just necessary for me to just distance myself. And the report actually now acknowledges that. This is not just about the absence of people in your career of choice. It's about a career that is not dominated by the presence of people. Shadow Match recommends that you take caution when choosing a career where people and their problems dominate the working content of your job. Can you see why being a manager caused a lot of frustration and stress for me? even being a teacher, because a lot of those kids not doing their homework was a problem to me, and it's engaging people not doing what they're supposed to do, and how difficult can it be? Okay, now my next one, and this sounds like I'm reading Peter's report, caring for people. Sounds like both of us are not very people focused. Working conditions and an environment where helping people is the job. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's just read what it says. The noble careers that are highly respected by everybody are those focused on caring and helping people in need. This will work for you as a part-time voluntary service, but not as a career. If you decide on a career in a people-related working environment, make sure it's not saturated with helping people in need. Now, at this point, I want to make a comment. These paragraphs are also different for each individual. This one you can obviously see relates to altruism. But depending on what the individual scored on their habit in shadow match, it can populate a different paragraph. Because if I score 40 for altruism, but it's one of my lowest habits, I'm going to get a different paragraph to the next individual that scores 10 points for altruism. So that's also important. It's not just a generic paragraph that we grab in the back end. The system, specifically when we look at the career tips, looks at the intensity of the habit when it decides what paragraph should populate here and how should that relate to the working environment or the directive I give this individual, thinking about a possible future career and their preferences. Then my next soft habit is working in a team. Again, the definition. And then it says, be very careful not to decide on a career where you are highly dependent on a team for the success of your job. Can you remember one of my other tips was try and work in an environment where you take full control of the job. So both of those actually populated as part of my important career tips. And this would be an important point to highlight if I was the client of a career counselor. The system says, take full control. Be careful to work in an environment where you are part of a team. So the fact that both of those actually came out in my tips is quite clear. I should preferably take a job or work in an environment where it's fully reliant on my engagement and I am not dependent on team members to make sure that the task is executed successfully. So ladies and gentlemen, take a moment, look at yours, look at your tips. You can even do that after the session, but go back and read those tips and take your shadow match results and see whether you can relate them back to your results. Look at your score on shadow match. This is all part of your training so that when you start to engage with clients, you've got a bit of a broad knowledge about how the report is constructed, which habits relate to which working constructs, and how do we formulate those career tips by taking the habit and formulating it as a working construct. Now we're moving into the conclusion and the test your career. So the last bit of the report is obviously the conclusion. And this is written in a very friendly manner. It says Shadow Match wants to give you a final tip. You are in a very strong and well-informed position to make a decision. Now, this is again, not everybody will get exactly the same paragraph. We've got a couple of conclusion paragraphs that the system decides to populate. And the reason for this is, ladies and gentlemen, if you do a group counseling for a group of final year school students, or even a 10 or 10 or 15 people in a group counseling session, we don't want them to sit next to each other and compare the reports and say, oh yeah, this is a generic thing. All of us got the same. Now you can rest assured that won't happen because it's so dynamic and the system works on a very complex level where it selects sentences and not just paragraphs and strings those sentences together based on the habits and the calculations and the algorithms using those habits of each individual. So the conclusion just says, use all of this information, build your puzzle before you make a decision. Then there's a paragraph that's very important, ladies and gentlemen, and Peter mentioned this last night. Sharon actually gave us the idea and said, you know what, I got the feeling, what now? Because what happens now is, remember, 72 hours after the individual received his or her career report, they will get their Test Your Career link active on their personal portal. So they don't know about this. And we knew about it. And then Sharon said, but what will the individual do next? And then we said, okay, thanks, Sharon. We've now added a paragraph in the email that the individual gets that says, after you've received your career report, 72 hours later, there will be a link where you can test your possible careers. And we've also added this last paragraph as part of the conclusion. And I think there's also one or two different paragraphs. They're not necessarily all the same. Your next step in the process is to read the report again and to make a visual summary of the content. It will be a good idea to discuss your report with someone. It helps to get clarity on some of the directives. Once you've created a visual summary, now this is the whole puzzle that you've built, put together a short list of possible career choices. The Test Your Career capabilities have been activated below. Just a final comment. Please do some research on the careers on your shortlist. Don't decide on a career if you are not sure what the work entails. This is important, ladies and gentlemen. This is not just, and you can see I've tested one career. I've still got 9 careers left to test, and we'll do one just now just to demonstrate the working of the system. This is not clever for a client to now go and sit, take a list of 10 careers and tick, 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 oh no, tick, 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 oh no. They must make sure that each of those careers that they test as a possible future career, they've investigated, they've done some research, and they know exactly what that career is all about. I've got first-hand experience with a youngster, I think she's now 17 years of age, where she tested the career of a forensic auditor. And it came out and said, not a match. But when I then afterwards sat with her, because she was one of the guinea pigs that helped us in the testing phase, I realized that she's got no idea what the job of a forensic auditor actually entails. So she answered the questions the way she thinks an internal or forensic auditor will do a job and will engage in daily activities. So this is very, very important. Before your client tests the careers, they must make sure that and this is where you then come in as the counselor to say, go back, don't test it yet. Go and think about these careers. In our next session, let's start to test 1 or 2 of the careers that you've researched and that you've investigated. And this is where your role as a career coach now starts to become very important, is to say, let me help you on this journey. Let's craft this together. So, and we'll test the career link just now, just a little bit of extra information. So the recommendation, ladies and gentlemen, and I guess that you can take one of 2 approaches. You can sit with your client for probably about a 1.5 to 2 hour session and work with your client through the career report, similar to what we've done today. Work through the videos, look at the graphs, those animated graphs, interpret that, help them think. Let's think about some examples. Let's write them down. Let's bring all these aspects together. Let's make a list of possible careers. So that's the one approach. The second approach is to say, let's take one aspect at a time. In other words, we do the introduction and we do the future of work. And that's the session for today. Come back next week and we then look at the broad focus of your career. So you can take one of 2 approaches. I would say, depending on who's your client. You know, for some people, this is quite a lot to digest in one session. For some clients, this will be a breeze. So I think there's not the one or the other. I think your approach with your client is really focused on who is my client, what's the age of my client, in what phase of his or her life is this client, and then I decide, am I going to work through the report in one session, or are we going to break it up in 2 or 3 sessions? And obviously, the fee that you charge for your session is then your prerogative. Peter will be discussing the business plan in tomorrow's session, and I think he will touch on that in tomorrow's session. But then once you've discussed the report and worked through the report with your client, then you say, let's end the session. Your homework is now to go and think about possible careers that takes all of these aspects of your career report into consideration. Make a short list of possible careers that you say, I think this can work for me. And let's meet again in a week or in 2 weeks' time. And then we're going to start to test some of these careers. Because then you really help your client to work with this in a proactive and in a clever manner. It's not just a click, 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 play, click, 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 play. Then you force them to really go and think about the aspects of the career report, how that relates to possible careers. And when they then come back for the session, you sit down with your client and both of you then go onto their personal portal interactively on the system. And you then say, okay, let's test a new career. So let's test a career just so that for the completeness of the demonstration, we go through the detail here. Oops. So in order to complete this test career, you will need to provide the career name and pick the options that best match the career that you are testing. So let's test teacher. Oops. And ladies and gentlemen, these are not generic questions. There might be overlap, but the questions that populates are also related to my habits, to the aspects in my career report. So the system populates these questions based on my habits, because what's going to happen now is the system is going to say, what are Lizette's habits? What are the constructs and the working constructs and the recommendations in the career report? And how do these habits relate to these aspects in the career that she's now testing? And is there actually a match? Is it 100% match? Is it only a 60% match, or is it a complete mismatch? So that's what the system now does. So the questions that populate will depend on what are your habit patterns and what are the recommendations and the constructs in your career report. So let's go through these questions. So if we look at a teacher, the pace and speed of activities in this job is slow, very slow, relatively slow but does not stagnate, slow but keeps on moving and things continuously happen at a reasonable and manageable pace. It's intense or it's very high. For a teacher, and I'm going to use my example when I taught many years ago, I would say it's quite slow but it keeps on moving. Things continuously happen, but it's a reasonable and a manageable pace. In this career as a teacher, is it not necessary to make things easier? Make things easier is not important for success in the job. Making things easier is important, but not critical. Making things easier and more effective is part of your work, or making things easy, quick, and efficient is the job. I would say it's part of the work. The job is free of problems to resolve, has very few problems, does from time to time present a problem to be resolved, but this is not the rule, more the exception, has lots of problems, is all about solving problems. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I was a language teacher. To be very honest, it does from time to time present a problem, but it's not problem saturated at all. If you do your preparation and you're ready for the class, the biggest problem is the child chewing gum or eating his sandwich whilst you are trying to present the class. It's not really anything else. The work you will do in this career can easily be done by fellow team members, only be done by those with specific knowledge and experience, only be shared with persons qualified for the job, not be done by anybody who's not qualified, or not be done by others unless they are in the same position. Being a language teacher, if you speak my mother tongue, I would say it can be done by people with specific knowledge and experience. The majority of tasks in the workplace related to this career can easily be shared with those with experience and a bit of training, only be shared with those qualified for the job, be shared only with a very selected few, not be shared with anybody unless they are part of the same job and project, only be done by an individual who takes full and final control of the task. Now, this is the majority of tasks in the workplace, the majority of the teaching tasks. be shared with those with experience and training, qualified for the job, qualified for the job. Working in collaboration with fellow team members is not at all important, is not important, but from time to time necessary, is part of the everyday work, but team members are not dependent on each other for success in their work. I would say this one, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of collaboration between teachers, but you're not dependent on the other teachers, but you are not working in isolation. Helping in people in need, who are in such a desperate situation that they can't help themselves. It's not at all part of the job. It's not part of the job, but from time to time, a colleague needs help. It's part of the job, but it doesn't dominate the work content. I would say it's not part of the job, but from time to time, you need to help a child or a colleague. The complexity of this career and the demands on your ability to successfully work with problems is such that anybody who can read and understand a daily newspaper will be able to do the job. Someone who has successfully completed high school will be able to do the job. Someone who did well in high school with success in all their subjects will be able to do the work. The majority of people who experience the complexities to be a stretch, only a small percentage of society. No, I think someone who did well in high school, maybe even the previous one, but let's choose that one just for the demonstration. Mark the options that this career emphasizes the most. Should the career be a mixture of them, you can select more than one option. Working intensely with people, working intensely with objects and tasks that are only related to things, working intensely with ideas, plans, and concepts. There's almost a perfect balance of working with people, with ideas, and working with things. I think it's probably the last one. Select the sentence which best describes this career. In this career, you must be prepared to work predominantly with theoretical content. In this career, you must be prepared to work predominantly with practical, physical, and technical work objects. This career provides you with a perfect balance between theoretical and physical or practical work. And now we submit, and immediately the system now comes back and says, the career teacher that you have tested has a 41% match to your habits. In the following areas, you will become frustrated with this career. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if it's a perfect match, a higher than 80% match, and I'm not 100% sure of the percentages, don't want to quote it. We can check, and I can make sure that Peter just mentions that tomorrow in the session, or maybe when we do questions just now. But if you've got a good match between the career and your habits, you will not get a list of frustrations. Then the system will say, this is a good match, or this is a very good match, go for it. The moment there's a mismatch between the career that you have tested and your habits, the system will give you the percentage match, and it will give you a list of the areas that will cause frustration for you in this career. And in this case, a teacher, it says the slight frustration areas will be to simplify the work content, working with problems, and work sharing. High risk frustration areas, working in a team, and the practical content. And then certain frustration areas, immediacy and being quick, because everything doesn't happen that quickly, taking control, the complexity of the career, and the fact that there's a people and an object focus element to this career, because my main focus should be ideas. So can you see how the system takes what we've seen in the report, thinking about my habits, and how it now tries to match the career that I've tested to my habits? This is very useful, ladies and gentlemen. There's no other career system out there that gives the person the opportunity to actually take the career and come and test it and see how good is the match, and what is the likeliness of me to understand and to enjoy and to really make this work and to find success and fulfillment in this career. So, and there are 10 opportunities to test careers. You can see I've now got 8 left, but this is why it's important to allow your client to first go and do some homework. Don't just do the report, do the tests, and off you go, because then it's not meaningful. So you can really craft 2 or 3, sometimes even 4 sessions with your clients. So for those of you where this is your job and this is your income, this is a great opportunity to use the career report and schedule a couple of sessions to take your client through the career report. And you can even do this in group sessions. So I think, ladies and gentlemen, I'm now going to, I see Peter has also switched on his video. I'm going to open the floor for questions. And Peter, I think before we do questions, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. And then I'm going to allow you to maybe just, if you want to comment, if you want to maybe comment specifically on that percentage that I've just quoted, that would be great. And if there's anything else that you would add or like to comment on, that's a great opportunity now. Thanks.
The percentages are above 80%, between 80 and 90%. The comment will be, this is a good match. Above 90% match, it will say, this is a very good or an excellent match. It will start with the word fantastic. This is a very good choice. Below 80%, it doesn't make a recommendation. It just says the match is, and now obviously, now we can say if it's 79%, it's a high match. It's 1% away from good. But then it will say, this is your frustration area. The lower the percentage fall into the low percentage matches, the longer the list will be. Lizette tested a teacher, it's a 41% match. So there's a long list of mismatches. So how it works, guys and girls, is we give the career 100 points. And then we start with penalties. So if there's a mismatch, all depends on how big the mismatch is. We deduct points from the 100% match. So we say, this person selected a teacher. Let's give the benefit of the doubt. And we start with the teacher career gets 100 points. So let's see the answers. Now they start answering and we say, no, that can't be 100 points, 5 points away. No, that can't be 7 points away. That can't be another 12 points away. No, this is a complete mismatch, 15 points away. So it deducts. At the end, it says 41 points are left as a match. And here is the list where we have deducted the points. So it's an extremely smart way of matching a career, a future career to the habits of an individual. And it's instant. There's a bit of homework. Obviously, I think Lizette mentioned, to sit down with somebody doing the job is the optimal position to be in. So if you want to become a teacher, go sit with a teacher and say to the teacher, help me answer these questions. Or go sit with an engineer. And if an engineer or a teacher is not available, do a bit of research, read an article on the internet, watch a video on YouTube about the work of an engineer. Just spend 10 or 12 minutes on understanding the career, and it'll give you a very good idea of how to answer the questions. But yeah, I've got nothing to add, Lizette. I think everything has been done very well.
Any specific questions, ladies and gentlemen, that you've got now? You're welcome to. Yes, Ellen.
Yeah, I was just wondering, when you get your report that you just showed, and I've done too, I also was a teacher, and I plugged that in and got a terrible result, and it didn't surprise me. At the bottom, when you reopen that report that you've received for that match, it gives you an option to retest this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, is that because some of those questions and those multiple choice options are subjective? It depends on how are you reading that question. And when I think about my colleague being the other teachers in the department, or because I'm an independent teacher in a classroom, are my colleagues the students? Mm-hmm. So it depends on how you want to answer those questions as to how that comes about.
That's very true, and that was exactly my experience with the girl that I referred to, because we did 2 or 3 tests with the internal auditor. After the first test, I said to her, you know what, wait a bit, let me also do some research. And we came back and we said, okay, let's retest, because exactly that happened. You know, things that I thought, this is a leadership type job, because one of the questions she got was, what is the leadership aspect of the job? And when I read up, I realized this is not really a leadership position. This is more a specialist position. So you're 100% right. That's why it's so important that you research the job properly. And that's why there's a lot of method in sitting with someone, because you might think, oh, my colleague is the other teacher. But sitting with another teacher, they might say, no, 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 that's not really your colleague. Your colleague is actually the students in your class. So you're 100% right. And that's why you can even take that same career and retest 2 or 3 times with different options, saying, maybe if the student is my colleague, how will it pan out? If the teacher is my colleague, how will it pan out? But that's a very important comment, and that's why the research and the knowledge of the career is so important, because the way you answer those questions obviously influences your result.
So if I retest that particular career choice, does that subtract from my 10 possible
Yes.
assessments? Okay.
Yes, that's again why we would say to our client, make sure, because you've got 10 opportunities. And if you've used teacher and you thought, maybe I didn't answer it correctly and I do teacher again, I've only got 8 left. Okay. So use them carefully and use them wisely. Sharon, you've got a question. Just your mic. You can go.
I'm trying to just anticipate some questions that I might get. So one of the ones is, has anyone commented on the dashboard where it shows people, ideas, this, and you're different, on why aren't there numbers on the end of it? Is anybody bothered by that, or does everybody just accept the graph as it is?
We haven't had any questions.
Okay.
The one question we had was there was a difference in the length of those little needles, or whatever you want to call it, the gauge. But that was just because they were so close to one another, and we had to show that ideas and people are actually exactly the same strength. So then when they align exactly on the same intensity on that gauge, obviously the one little handle will be shorter, so that we can show that your ideas and your people are exactly the same strength. So no, we haven't had any questions, but it's just important to know that it's about the intensity and which one is a higher intensity than the other. I don't know if you want to comment, Peter.
Yeah, the question is a bit complicated. It's got to do with the statistical algorithm that we use, Sharon. What we did is we said, what is the highest score that somebody could get on dynamic preference, and what is the statistical lowest score that somebody could get? Now, on some of these variants, the lowest score could be -14, and the highest could be 67. But on the next one, the lowest could be -5, and the highest could be 77. And we couldn't find a statistical standard that we say, like for habits, it varies from 0 to 100 points. And then we decided that let's just show on.
Peter is frozen.
And what we wanted is, did I freeze?
Yeah, sorry, maybe you can just repeat the last sentence, Peter.
Yeah, what we are trying to do currently, Sharon, is to sort of bring a bit more detail into those graphs so that it shows a bit more detail, but without numbers. But it's I think it's quite clear enough where it sits on the graph. But we are currently in the redesign phase of those graphs, because I want a bit more detail in the graphs so that it shows a bit more of the content what we need. But it's a good question. We're working on it.
Okay, Lizette, I just have one more personal question.
Go for it.
It's been a while since I did my report. Has some of the organization or some of the wording changed since I did mine? It was a couple of weeks ago, or is it just just because it's my personal report?
No, it's just probably, are you referring to the career report?
Yes.
No, I think it's just because it's your personal report. So, and that's a very good comment. It just shows you that my report differs from yours. So it's the same constructs, it's the same categories, but nothing has changed, Sharon, no. We've added that last paragraph to refer to the Test Your Career link. So that's the only thing we've added, but no, the content and the constructs hasn't changed, nothing.
Okay.
Any other questions, ladies and one gent, because Peter will answer, you won't ask.
Lizette,
Right.
can you
Yes.
can you tell me which of the report headings have the potential to have different videos versus the ones that are static?
Yes. I just want to make sure the practical or theoretical.
That's the only one that would be a different video?
Yeah,
Okay.
some of, I think on the introduction, there's 1 or 2 different videos, but they have exactly the same content. You know, it's a little bit of a different video, but specifically on the practical and theoretical, there are different videos. It depends on the gender, and it also depends on the conceptual fitness level of the individual. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
100%. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It's we're a little bit earlier, so you've got an earlier break today. We'll do our last session tomorrow, same time, same place. We're looking forward to that. If you have any questions in the meantime, please go and read your report. I think you've got a little bit of a broader knowledge now on how to interpret and how to read it. Please feel free to send some questions via email, and we can then, or even ask your question at the beginning of tomorrow's session. Tomorrow, as we said, will then be the business plan. Peter, is that the main focus of tomorrow's session, is the business plan on how to take this to market and how to, as a business coach, generate an income from this?
Yeah. What I want to do tomorrow evening is to show how we can use the report on face-to-face, one-on-one feedback, but also in group feedback sessions. For instance, I plan to do a career day early next year, sort of February, and there will probably be between 200 and 300 high school children or high school young people. So you can, it all depends on the facilitator, but you can handle very large numbers of people. So I will deal with how to use it and how to use it in group sessions and in group feedback, because obviously that's much more practical and financially it pays much better for your time. And then I would give you a high level outline of suggested pricing structures, but I think in the two cities with Sharon and with Joni in Nashville and in Austin, what we must do is in the next 3 months work out. I've got some guidelines, but work out what works best. So, but what we don't want to do is to say that somebody bought this in New York for this price and in Nashville for this price and in Austin they paid this. So we just want to stick to it. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but we mustn't be way out of each other. So we're trying to coordinate this. So I'll give a very high level of pricing structure, but then we can work it out with you as we progress through the process of getting the perfect place where we should price this. But that's the plan for tomorrow, and we might again be a bit early. But if you have lots of questions, obviously you're welcome.
Yeah, maybe just the last comment from my side. What we're also planning to do, and this is now early phase of just ideas, is to during this time of everybody being in lockdown and social distancing and not being able to go where you normally go, is to maybe do an online career workshop, similar to what we do now with the training, but to invite people to obviously, get their career report, and then we facilitate a feedback online so that everybody sits with their own report. And similar to what we did this evening, but obviously more focused on the individual so that they sit with their own report and we help them interpret each of those sections. And then obviously we can then have an invitation with accredited career coaches to say there's a list of accredited career coaches. If you want to then after this 1 hour, it's going to be a 1 and a 1.5 hour online workshop. Contact one of these career coaches and they can help you think through these aspects and these constructs, and they can help you then start your journey on an optimal career that you craft for yourself. So that's one of the ideas that we've got, and also to optimize this time and to optimize the online and the social media marketing part. So we'll keep you posted, and because if we do that, we would love you to also invite people, and we can look at how we share that income. Because we want to do it at a very affordable price, because I think a lot of people are currently in a desperate situation of, I'm going to lose my job. I have already lost my job. I'm not sure where I'm going to go from here because this virus has changed my life completely, and what options are available for me. So it's something that we want to offer to the community globally to say, but let's help you. And obviously, if you guys can help in the marketing, so we'll keep you posted on that. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful afternoon and evening, and then we'll all chat again tomorrow. Thanks. Go well. Bye-bye.
Bye, Greg.
Bye.
Hey, thank you.
Yes,
Good job.
bye. Thank you. Thanks.